Thank you to those that have suggested some topics to discuss in the Facebook group Our Little Minds. And one of the topics that's come up is ADHD and how does it affect self-esteem? There's this perception that anybody with self-esteem is confident, they're busy, and how on earth could they have negative self-esteem? Or do they have more self-esteem? And why would a child with ADHD have these problems? Well, it goes to understanding what the essence of ADHD is. For someone who's ADHD, they tend to always be busy, they're hyperactive, they're always being shouted at, they're touching, reaching, fidgeting, they often get injured. Boys and girls are very different. Boys are obviously busier, and at school they tend to fidget more. They stand out that are different from girls. Girls often get missed because they don't have that impulsivity and busyness. And inattention is ignoring other people, not purposefully, not finishing tasks, getting called out for not finishing tasks, late in the morning with routines, not ready, making the rest of the family late. And of course, older children, when they're interacting socially in a conversation, they lose track of things, they're inattentive. They sound as though they're trying to be difficult, they're not interested. They alienate people, and they get negative feedback. Time management is a huge problem. And they're always late, they're always kind of being called at. And the older someone gets with ADHD, particularly in an employment environment, they often are being reprimanded, warnings at work for being late. And accidents, inattention in a car, being distracted, accidents, constant, your life is filled with lots of negative trauma, almost lots of incoming problems. In a way, it's being panel beaten all the time. You know, in a work environment or a child at school, never getting anything right, always having criticism aimed at them. And these children can be described as children that have chronic, unexplained underachievement. You know, to have good self-esteem, you need to have little small wins, little small encouragements. And those little small wins become big wins eventually. And self-esteem is something that's formed early on in life. The way you feel about yourself at the age of 9 years is kind of the way you feel about yourself as an adult. So the importance of recognizing what ADHD is and addressing these symptoms very early on. And of course, finally, impulsivity. Children with ADHD, particularly in a school environment, if they have emotional impulsivity, they are rejected by their peers, 50% of them by the third grade. They are socially isolated. They don't have as many friends. They've got poor social skills. They talk over people. They interrupt. The teacher's constantly having to discipline them. And of course, impulsivity, they make poor decisions. So the essence of ADHD is always looking for something new. When they try to achieve a goal, they never really get there, because when they achieve some sort of success, it's almost deflating. They're looking for the next thing. They never really feel like they have achieved anything because they're looking for the next thing. It's almost a kind of an imposter syndrome. Even with those little successes, you know, there's always lots of negatives. So self-esteem issues in ADHD is an enormous impact. And probably one of the biggest reasons that parents get worried and find their children withdrawing. And when you have negative self-esteem, you become overly sensitive. You kind of don't really want to do anything. You give up. And, you know, children with ADHD often then end up not really trying, because if they don't try, they don't get things wrong. They don't get negative criticism. So the output the amount of work, the contribution eventually fades. And that is a major factor long term when 2/3 of children that become adults with ADHD, negative self-esteem stays with you for life. And that is another reason to address it very early.